Hi, everybody. For DPAA Short Connects today, we have a long-term friend of mine, Ben Jankowski, who is the group head of global media at Mastercard. Ben, you've spent many years on the media side at Omnicom, MPG, and Media Edge. You've done domestic and international, and now about 10 years or so at Mastercard, and you've become one of the global icons of media. Tell us about your role at Mastercard.
Yeah.
You know, what you actually do, what your teams do, how you interface with agencies around the world, Ben.
Yeah, so I'm the Senior Vice President of Global Media at Mastercard, which means I help the company manage all of our paid media around the world. We materially advertise, spend a decent amount of money in roughly 60 countries. So I help the organization develop an overall strategy, kind of a priorities or a mission statement or a North Star, if you will, for what are we trying to do with media. It's so complicated. As everybody knows, everybody who's probably consuming this media environment is so complicated today. So I help the company and me and my team help my company, develop, how do we develop strategies for how we're going to deal with, how we're going to prioritize the work that we want to do. We're lucky to have a really powerful brand that's rooted in, experiences. We've been an early stage experiential marketer before there was, before anybody else was talking about it. So how do we evolve from today? How do we move from, we don't have experiences at right now, and we hope to have it later on this year, but we don't have, hundreds of thousands of people in, Istanbul for this year's Champions League final, or going to Dodger Stadium for the Major League Baseball All-Star game. So how do we make those like virtual experiences? So how do we kind of pivot? So a lot of it is helping us develop strategies, helping the markets execute, and then on the back end, making sure we can apply learning. How can we apply learning, both best practice and worst practice? Not replicating somebody's failure is just as important as replicating their success. So trying to help the organization do that for our local marketers.
How about during this period, how are you motivating your teams? And I guess you've got an array of agencies around the world. You've got teams in different places. How are you keeping everybody in touch and motivating them?
Yeah, great question. And I think for the first couple of weeks, it was just more like a couple dynamics were happening. One is we're still uncertain as to what the term of this was going to be. And we were also dealing with the immediate impact of that short period where you found the big radical change. So it's just kind of like, that was a little bit more like triage, keeping everybody together, making sure everybody had what they needed, moving things forward. And now as we kind of evolve out of that, I don't think anybody, and I'm not going to try to predict how long I'm going to be sitting in my basement versus, in my office or on an airplane somewhere. But I think now we're kind of morphing into like, okay, this is a little bit longer term. So how do we resume that sense of normalcy? So how do we still have, group calls that we used to have face to face? We're doing conference calls, and how do we keep the momentum around with people to be like, try to make it behave like it's business as usual. Yeah, but you also have to be cognizant of like, I have people on my team who are now, homeschooling at the same time they're developing, media strategy. So you have to be a little bit cognizant of that. But that evolution from what I'll call the triage moment, that wave now into this is going to be more of a medium term behavior is, just try to make it as much business as usual as you can.
Ben, your constituencies that you intend to reach by your media, is it consumers? Is it also B2B? Is it banks? Is it retail? Who are the customers, the end consumers of your media messaging?
Yeah, I mean, most of what we have a bit of a hybrid between business to consumer and business to business. And to a degree, we're really kind of, to a large degree, we're business to consumer to business in a weird way. So basically, every MasterCard you have in your wallet doesn't come from us. It comes from an issuing bank. Depending on the country, it'll be different issuing banks. So ultimately, they're the sale, because if Santander doesn't issue MasterCards in Spain, or name your favorite country where Santander issues cards, then we don't have business, right? So part of it is ultimately how do we demonstrate to our ultimate customers, which is banks, retailers, etc., that we're, a strong partner that they should work alongside of, and that's through, strong brand, showing usage programs, things like that. It's a little bit less involved in getting more cards out there. Generally speaking, we let the issuing banks focus on acquisition. We focus on usage. So trying to prove to people and motivate and inspire people to use our card instead of other devices they have in their wallet.
Of course, with the experiential advertising that you've been so good at, it's very important in the sports world, and you've been a big buyer of sports in many countries, and evidently sports is not happening, the Olympics are not happening. Where are you shifting those monies to, or where are you shifting those marketing efforts, and how's that working, Ben?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Some of it I talked a little bit earlier about creating virtual experiences. A little bit of that has been through creating virtual experiences. Last week we had Ian Poulter and Graham McDowell, who, if you're not a golfer, we have 7 golf ambassadors. There are 2 of them. They played virtual golf using a game, and we were able to broadcast that on across social media. So we're trying to take the assets that we have and trying to find ways to repurpose them is one thing. And second thing is we're doing a lot of shifting to how do we find, what's the new virtual way to drive. Again, culinary is probably one of those categories where how do we pivot from restaurants and things like that to store delivery. It's not a huge, we didn't think of marketing to the store delivery component before, but it's just a different point of emphasis. How can we be nimble and agile and get some of those partnerships that are a little, given the increased volume that they've had to pick on that category, how can we evolve into that?
That's smart. And, as we've all seen Governor Cuomo here in New York talk about, don't just kind of reopen, but reimagine. It sounds like you're doing that, trying to recreate your experiences in different ways. So that's in terms of the media buying. What about the messaging? Are the commercials looking any different? Are you sending out relevant commercials for the time and the period?
Yeah, I think you kind of have to, right? I think that when I see, and I actually had this discussion with my wife last night, we were watching TV, and there were some brands in there, I won't name them, embarrass them or embarrass myself by being ignorant, that really didn't have a unique message or tried to put a unique message in where they really weren't relevant. So I think that consumers will acknowledge, accept, and appreciate brands that really have something to say right now. And I think we have to change the way that we say it. In our business, we think about the issues that drive us today. What are the things that we bring to benefit consumers? It's things, if you think about consumer behavior, it's things like, how do we drive more e-commerce? How can we provide value to consumers in the space of e-commerce where a lot more people are shopping? So if you're beyond e-commerce, we've made great strides in contactless. So if you're working with either kind of legacy forms like physical cards or working in the mobile phone space, the depth and breadth of that penetration has always been, a little bit of a challenge to change people's behavior. And now's the perfect time to remind them you don't have to, my World Leap, my Advantage, American Airlines Advantage, World Leap, Mastercard doesn't touch anything when I go to the supermarket every Sunday. I virtually hold it up to the reader, and through contactless we drive that. So messages like that. How do we provide value to consumers? You can't oversell it. It's a touchy point. You can't. I think that we're all trying to figure out the right cadence and voices on that.
That makes perfect sense. So you deal with a lot of your agencies around the world. Evidently, you're in touch with a lot of media owners and sellers across all media. What advice would you give to media owners in general during this period when evidently billing is somewhat challenged?
Found a really good quote to kind of depict how we should be working in today's environment. Had a partner come in and say, today's environment is about speed, not greed. Now is not the time to start selling people on incremental revenue opportunities, incremental growth opportunities. It's how can you be a trusted value partner? How can you help them make decisions? and how can you do it quickly and get people on side. And some of those decisions are really, really hard, right? I totally appreciate many of your media owners have had, probably virtually all of your media owners have had a plethora of phone calls, hopefully not all the phone calls, saying, help me, I got to get out of my activity. It's a difficult decision to make. And appreciate, where do you draw the line? Like, got to sign contract versus I'm going to try to help a long-term partner. Again, it's easier said than done in some environments, but those that have the ability to be able to look at this long-term, we know this is an aberration. It's unique because other things that we've had, other events, have had a little bit more of a timing frame to it. We knew that certain events were only going to last for a period of time. And this is a little bit, non-traditional. But thinking about the long term, thinking about how can you really build partnerships. Advertisers will remember, everybody remembers. I'll remember the partner who helps me out and doesn't try to get their pound of, flesh from me. Then I will remember those that, than those that don't. And we have a situation with some of our partners. We've had conversations. Some of them have been amazing. Some of them haven't been. We all remember both of them.
Maybe a couple of thoughts. So we certainly know that audiences are not outside, and it's a bit of a challenging time for out of home. Of course, we see pockets reopening, and we've had a tremendous amount of momentum in the out of home, especially the digital out of home area up until recently. What would you say are some of the, ideally when we come out of this, some of the positives of out of home and digital out of home that you've seen?
I think when we come out of this, and we will come out of this, there are a lot of brands that will really be better about driving simplicity of message. It's not a complex message. It doesn't have to be, the ability to deliver simple, significant messages in a great environment to large amounts of people. Again, I think the benefit for you guys is these aren't complicated messages. These are marketers here to help consumers, dig out of their challenge. So I think that from a message simplicity and the need to get scale out there, the beauty of out of home is it reaches so many people and so much scale, coupled with it's a simple message. A lot of these messages are going to be really, really simple. I think will play well to play well when we get out of a recovery, and it won't be linear. It won't grow at the same rate. And every country will have different speeds. I think it will be easy. The message that the message is, it's a simple message. It's and I think it will be it'll be easy it'll be easy for out of home to demonstrate its strengths.
Have you done much with digital out of home to date?
Yeah, not recently. We do a lot because we do a lot of proximity. If we think about us with experiences, we'll do some. A lot's always a relative word, right? So we've done a lot. We've done some with things like locations. We've done some transit around transit locations. If you're getting ready, if you're at different times of the day, we can deliver different messages, or use your Mastercard to get on the New York City subways, or Transport for London, or the Transport Authority of Singapore. In those different markets, we've got, we've had digital messages around at different times of the day. We're trying to drive different things. Some of them are around just use your card. Some of them are around, we've driven experiences around, in some markets we've done, for instance, music set lists specifically for your ride, right? I know how long your ride is because you make the same ride every day. In some markets, we've worked with marketers and media companies to be, to come up with, specific playlists for, it knows your commute to the office instead of your commute from the office, or your commute from, from the restaurant or the bar, and it delivers you a different playlist. And that's pretty cool. So we've done things like that. We've we're trying to experiment. We're trying to do a lot with, virtual, audio, things like that. How do we get into, the audio systems and things like that, which is a big space. So I said we're dabbling. I think that the degree that we're very experientially oriented, and we work really hard to be contextually relevant around things that people love, like travel, culinary, sports. Sports. Without having sports, I'm dying. It's like, I can only watch so many replays of, sporting events to get excited. Music, so we put a lot of emphasis as a marketer around being contextually relevant. And I think that digital out of home is perfect for finding those environments in proximity to a music hall when there's a concert. It's a concert one day and maybe it's next to a shopping mall. So we can divide out messages.
During this whole period, what inspires Ben Jankowski and keeps you motivated during the day in this quarantine situation we're in?
Some of the things we are doing, like whether they be, I'm relatively active in some industry associations, the World Federation of Advertisers and the Association of National Advertisers here in the U.S. And we're doing a lot of work to try to, how do we look at the environment and how do we change the environment of how we buy and sell media with today's environment? One of the examples of things that we're trying to think about differently is how do we deal with like the U.S. TV buying market? Today is April 29th. In 2 weeks would have been the week where all the networks would have assembled everybody in Radio City Music Hall and the ballroom at the New York Hilton and other venues to have their big presentations. Well, studios are closed, no production. We don't know when sports is going to come back. When sports comes back, and I need it desperately to come back personally because I'm a huge sports fan, everything will be pushed into fourth quarter. How will that impact our business? How will that impact viewing behavior? From our business standpoint, many marketers will be challenged to figure out, are working hard to figure out this third quarter, to think about how we're going to do next third quarter and start doing buying in a couple months for the broadcast year of September of 21 through, September 20 through third quarter 21? Impossible. So we're spending a lot of time trying to figure out, working with agencies and broadcasters, how do we figure out new timing? And maybe now's the time to start planning on a calendar year when everybody else does, instead of this silly little broadcast year. So stuff like that's really interesting, right? It's now we've had some things that have been legacy behaviors for 60 years. Maybe now is the time to put a dent in some of them because we've kind of been forced to because of this challenge.
So if I would kind of do three takeaways of Ben and what he's saying today, I'm hearing keep business as normal as possible, even though it's challenging. Two, do virtual where you can. I love your idea of you're doing the virtual golf and doing virtual sports to keep that Mastercard experience going. And then three, you had the great line of speed, not greed. This is a time to establish and build and create trust and relationships, not to kind of take the money and run, so to speak, but to really endear and try to all realize we're in this together and we come out of it together.
If you can, it's a great time to show that, you're a great partner and you can be flexible, nimble, and agile and work with your clients to drive success. And that sounds obvious, but it's hard now. And you'll get, the people that can do it will get more value out of it.
Well, Ben, you've been a great partner to the digital out-of-home and the out-of-home world. You've been a speaker at a Video Everywhere Summit. You'll be speaking for our Canadian one this year. And thank you for doing this. As always, some great pearls of wisdom. And it's always great to see you again. And thank you. And I love the background. And your basement looks terrific today.
Thank you, my friend.